Okay, I listened to the audio commentary for 1% after I watched the episode, and guess what? They said exactly what I expected them to say, but then again, I'm not necessarily surprised because I actually listened to this a very long time ago, and they said the things that I expected them to say there too. Man, talk about a couple of guys who will say as little as they possibly can in order to make you come to an opinion for yourself. This is 1% or Carman 1%, as I'm just going to call this one. In this episode, Cartman makes the entire school, the fourth and the fifth grade class specifically, fail the presidential fitness test because he's overweight and very unhealthy. Now, normally I don't talk about the side plots in these things, but I'm going to do it because this is probably one of my favorite side plots in the entire series. And I think, unfortunately, the commentary made in the 99% versus 1% has become, unfortunately, more relevant now than it's ever been. Jimmy and Butters are protesting outside of Red Robin, but they're not actually protesting outside of Red Robin. They're protesting outside the building that the government is renting to enforce the presidential fitness test and in their area. And the news treats it like they're rallying outside of Red Robin. And at no point in the episode do the newscasters or the announcers or anyone internally within the news try to correct the misinformation they are spreading, which I think is very salient commentary that has only become even more relevant today if you understand the current political landscape of the year 2026, especially given what information just dropped and that no major news outlets are even trying to come close to the gigantic bomb that just dropped because of the rise of fascism that's been going on since 2016. Oh boy, I wonder who's responsible for that. But enough about that. Eventually, the fifth graders come and are like the 83%, and the 83% and the 99% rally eventually start infighting, which I think is also very relevant too. Oftentimes, in leftist circles, you will get people who are fighting for the same thing but want their marginalized group to be heard over another marginalized group. And because people are stupid and focused on infighting and only care about their hyper specific voices being heard, and they don't care about intersectionality and all of that, they beat each other up. And wow, it's so depressingly relevant. It's it's so prophetic too. I mean, this thing has been happening for a very long time, but they just keep calling it. South Park out here understands human nature a lot more than other TV shows. Unfortunate for humanity that South Park continues to be proven right by our stupidity and selfishness. Cartman is a character who doesn't need an introduction, but I feel compelled to give him one anyways, because not only is he the most famous character on the show, and he is the show's ideological fist, but a lot of the audience that come into the show haven't necessarily registered that the show is satire and is therefore trying to say something, but not something that they necessarily want to hear. In fact, Cartman is kind of the poster child for satire that goes over people's heads because they only see what they want to see from the character and not actually trying to engage with like the full picture of what this character is trying to represent. Cartman is white trash, his mother is white trash, and because Leanne has no interest in raising him, it creates this very unhealthy child, mentally unhealthy, physically unhealthy child who's only out for his own interest the vast majority of the time, but he does show and demonstrate a lot of times empathy and understanding beyond what you would expect from someone like him. And it's because he wants to participate and be a part of the society that ostracizes him. The reason he chooses to be an instigator, and the reason he chooses to mess with people is because it is a reproduction of the way society treats him. Because Cartman and Leanne exist on the fringes of society and are easy to make fun of because of their status of living on the fringe of society, he gets the brunt of all of the abuse that society has to hurl. He gets hit with a lot of those societal stigmas, being fatherless, being fat, being unhealthy, like a lot of things out of his control. He gets blamed for, and that ends up creating this very, very angry child who's looking for revenge, but he's not looking for revenge for the right reasons. He's just looking for revenge so that he can not only prove his friends wrong, but also tell society that he is someone that you shouldn't mess with. It is important to register that Cartman's selfish behavior and a lot of the maladaptive coping mechanisms are born out of a need for survival than a genuine display of malice or hatred towards anyone. Being in a situation like Cartman's can cause a lot of psychological damage. And that's something that the show dabbles in more frequently than it likes to admit. Like the commentary that I was just listening to, it dabbles on the very surface level of the psychological ramifications of Cartman. But given who Matt and Trey are, I know that they are never going to be direct with their intentions, because South Park is a show that wants you to think for yourself. Matt and Trey are not interested in giving their audience the answers to these questions because it denies the label of being junk food. Okay, so the entire school gets a bad score on the presidential fitness exam because of Cartman, and because of Cartman, they lose their recess privileges and have to go to the gym and do rigorous physical exercises. And in the class, because Cartman is more defeated and lying on his back more than usual, he understands the futility of the situation. He cracks jokes at Kyle and Kenny's expense to get the heat off of him, but Stan and Craig both call him out. And it's interesting too, because Stan and Craig have this one thing in common. They're both very curt when it comes to their criticism of other people. And because Stan and Craig are both criticizing him at once, Cartman, understanding the futility of the situation, comes up with this plan on the sly to get the heat off of him. In fact, a lot of this episode is Cartman's own, ruminations on futility, on about government bodies just deciding things for people out of the blue. The episode is about the futility of class struggle when it comes to government regulations versus the people. So Cartman on the fly has to come up with some scheme in order to get all of the other kids' criticism off him, and in this case it's really just Stan and Craig. But Cartman, understanding the futility of the situation and because of the nature of some of the insults the other kids hurl at him, and may I remind you again that it's not really his fault that they failed the... Well, this is actually a question of semantics, but I don't really think any of this is Cartman's fault. The blame is with the government, and I think assigning the blame to Cartman in a situation only creates more problems than it solves. Matt and Trey in the commentary are quote-unquote supposedly on the side of the other kids by saying Cartman does need to grow up and he does need to learn to accept criticism better. But if we take the full picture of Cartman into consideration, there are a multitude of reasons he can't really do that and would not be in the position to do that, which I think is the angle that the episode is telling you to listen to. The first incident is Clyde Frog being bisected and nailed to a tree. And this is the only death that warrants a funeral from Cartman, mind you. Copyrighted character Clyde Frog is dead. And at the funeral scene, the only child that is staring him directly with his eyes is Kenny until he starts insulting everyone. I think that is worth paying attention to. The next death or removal of the dolls from a state where they are pristine, I suppose is what I should say, is the panda, and then it's the doll, the wrestler doll, and then it's the dragon, Rubber Tumpskin. And then finally, Cartman shoots a Polly Pissy Pants in the face. Throughout the subsequent quote-unquote murders, his friends start to become more and more concerned for him because it looks that Cartman is actually being targeted by an outside source, because at the beginning of the episode, one of the 5th graders says, "Oh boy, we better teach that Cartman a lesson, or we better show them what for." And this is a misdirect, but it's a funny misdirect because, again, it services the best B plot in the entire series, and you are led to believe that it's going to be them at the Tolkien residence destroying the animals, but instead it is Cartman actually doing it. And in the ending scene, he is very specifically doing all of this because the other kids wanted him to grow up. The other kids not really considering the implications or meaning of their words. They were just sick of the government placing a very arbitrary rule/standard on their class because of Cartman's bad health. Said a bunch of cruel things to Cartman, and then he does all of this because they did not think about the implications of what they were saying. I mean, it's natural child behavior for what the kids did at the beginning of the episode, what they said to Cartman, and it's not really their fault either, which is why this whole episode is a conversation about semantics. I could be really lame right now and say it's all about learning how to work together and about thinking about what you say to someone before you say it. But the whole episode is a lot more complicated than just the implications of language and about learning how to exist in coharmony. It's about the effect that arbitrary rules and standards can have on groups of people that can often lead to unproductive infighting, which is something that I think a lot of people in left-wing groups have not really listened to. This sort of message has not really fallen on their ears. It seems to me that a lot of modern activists would rather infight for their hyper-specific group than accept the intersectionality of struggle around class, race, and even weight. And this is to say nothing of the struggles for trans people who have been hunted for sport by the government for a good several years now because of this administration. It is absolutely nuts. Which is kind of funny because in his own, twisted and Machiavellian way, Cartman is the only character in this episode that understands the intersectionality of struggle. At every single point in this episode, Cartman is definitely demonstrating more class conscientiousness and political awareness of how like multifaceted and complicated these situations are than anyone in the entire cast. He is the only one who is demonstrating any kind of political consciousness, but it is undercut by the fact that he is behaving in the way he is. Like, Cartman is the only one there who truly understands the futility of the situation. And because he has been demonstratively ostracized from the social group because of circumstances outside of his control and because the kids are angry at him, there is no like true harmony between between the campaigning kids and the kids who are just kind of angry that they have to do this. It's because of all the infighting. This is an episode about infighting. Okay, I think that's it.